This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Samoch and Baruch Hashem. Another very exciting day in the world of Daf. As we wrap up the famed Chezkas Habatim, a very, very long journey this was. But B'siyata Dishmaya, hopefully, as we always say, the end of the parak will signal a Chazara, and we'll pick it up from there. We're on the top of Samoch Amid Aleph, two down at the two dots. And we quote the Mishnah that says, that if someone purchases a house in an adjacent chatzar, lo yiftachenu, he's not allowed to open up the house into l'chatzar hashutafim. Says the Gemara, my taima, explains the Gemara, is a derech, because if you open a new door, what happens? There's more people. If there's more people, now the chutzner has more traffic, and you're not allowed to do that. It says the Gemara, Masef, what at the end of the Mishnah teach us? If you want to build a room within his house, and he can build an attic on top of that. Ask the Gemara 1 second. But if he does that, it sounds like you're allowed to enlarge your own house, thereby allowing other people to live inside your house, as long as you don't have an extra Pesach, as long as you don't have an extra door. Says the Gemara, if the whole issue was increasing the traffic, increasing the people, by building up your house, you're going to do just that. Amar Rav Huna explains, Rav Huna, my cheder, what does it mean to build a room inside? What it means is that you're dividing an interior room into two, and aliyah means a low compartment, which is you're not actually increasing the size of the house, you're increasing maybe the functionality of the house, and therefore there are not going to be more people living there, and that is the reason why the Mishnah allowed one to do such, even though to increase traffic is the problem. We continue with the Mishnah at the beginning of the wide lines. Samach Amud Aleph. Lo yiftach adam lachatzar hashotfim. Person cannot open into a chatzar hashotfim. Pesach keneged Pesach. A doorway opposite a doorway. Chaloin keneged a chaloin. Hayakatan lo yasenu gadol. Echad lo yasenu shnai. If there was a small doorway, you cannot make it large. If it was one doorway, you cannot make it two. Aval, but if the doorway is opening in to Rishus Harabim, then you are allowed to make Pesach keneged Pesach, Chaloin keneged Chaloin, Hayakatan oiseh gadol, ve'echad oiseh shnayim. So if one is opening into the street, then you are allowed to enlarge and allowed to increase the amount of doorways. Says the Gemara, Minani, Midi, from where do we know that you're not allowed to have a Pesach, Keneged Pesach, etc.? Amar Rav Yechlan, Amar Krav, he said, Bilam is enough. And Bilam raised his eyes, Ve'aris Yisrael Sheikh in the Shvatav. And he saw each Shevet, he saw Klaisa living, each Shevet, Mara, what did he see? Ra She'ein Pischei Ahaleya Mechuvanim Zelazat Tznios. You don't have each door opening opposite each other. Amar says Bilam, when you have doorways facing each other, then you see right into your neighbor's house, and it's a breach in modesty. And therefore, Klal Yisrael, when they encamped, it was a staggered formation. And from there, we learn out that you're not allowed to open a door opposite the door of your friend. Hayakatan lo yasenu gadol. Explains the Gemara, Sabi Rami Barcham lemeimar bar dalid lo yasha bar tamanya. A 4-amma wall doorway, you cannot make an 8-amma doorway. Why? The reason being because then opposite your door in the chutzner, you get land in accordance to the size of the doorway. So says Rami Bar Chama, you know what the problem is? When you widen the door, you're essentially taking over a larger piece of the chutzner. Aval bar tarti. However, if there's a 2-amma doorway, l'shavi bar araba shavir dami, to make a 2-amma door, a 4-amma door, that would be allowed. Why? Because the minimum you get piece of land is by a 4-amma door. Until 4 ammas, you get the same piece of land. Therefore, you're not getting more in the chutzner. So Rabbi Bar Chama thought then it would not be a problem to increase the size of the doorway. But Amalei Rava says, Rava, Matzi Amarle, no. The other people in the chutzner, the other neighbors could complain and say, Bebizcha Zutra Matzina Litztanuye Minach. However, Bebizcha Rabba Loy Matzina Litztanuye Minach. A small doorway I could hide from. You have a small doorway, I can conceal what I'm doing. When you have this massive doorway opening into the chutzner, it removes some of the privacy from the neighbors, and therefore, even though you're not getting a larger piece of land, says the Gemara, says Rava back to Rabbi Bar Chama, that would still be a problem. And Sameach in the middle of the white lines, we continue the 2 dots. Echad lo yasenu shnayim. Sovereign Bar Chama lemeimar again. Parabai lo shabi trei. Rabbi Bar Chama thought the bar arba, 4-amma doorway, lo shavi bar b'nei tarte. You cannot make it into 2-amma doorways. Why? Because again, each doorway gets a 4-amma space. Up until 4 ammas doorway, we learned gets 4 ammas. So if you have a 4-amma doorway, then you split into 2-amma doorways. Now you have extra doorways. Gemara and Sukkah, like we've learned. And therefore, each door, according to Rabbi Bar Chama, gets a piece of land. Therefore, you're going to get more land. But if it is an 8-amma doorway, which means you're already getting 8 ammas of land in the chutzner, then Rabbi Bar Chama thought you're allowed to l'shaveh b'nei arba shaper dami. There's no problem making 2 doorways of 4. Why? Because each one still gets the same 4 ammas in the chutzner. Amar Rava, Amalei Rava, no. Same like we saw before, that the neighbors could say no. 1 doorway we could conceal ourselves from, but not 2. You're allowed to open into Rosh Hashanah, a door opposite a door, etc. Says the Gemara, why? Because he could say to his neighbors, either way, it's Rosh Hashanah. So either way, you have to be wary of the people there. So the fact that I have an extra opening or a larger opening has no relevance. It does not affect anyone else. Continuing with the second mission on the bottom of Samach Amar Aleph. You're not allowed to make a hole under Rosh Hashanah. For example, by Rashichanu Ma'arais, ditches, pits, wells. Rav Lezer Matir. Why? Kadesha Tehei. Agolam Aleches Utunavan. Says Rav Lezer, if there's a cover over the pit, which is strong enough for a wagon with stones to drive over it, then it's not a problem. Continues the Mishnah, part number 2, in Moitzin Zizin Gzutrayis or Shisarabim, cannot extend a ledge or a balcony into Rosh Hashanah. Elim Ratza, Kaines the Terch Shalai. If he wants, he can move the wall into his house, Umaitzi, and then extend over your own property lines, but not over Rosh Hashanah. Loka Chatzer Uba Zizin V'Gutrais. If one bought a Chatzer, and there are houses that have ledges, balconies over that area, Harezu B'Chazkasai. The Chatzer is its own status, and therefore, if within his Chatzer that he bought there are Zizin V'Zigutrais, then he's allowed to continue them there. If they were already there when you bought it, then you now have right over it. So says the Gemara, what did the Tanakama say? We had a machlaikas about digging a well, digging a pit. Tanakama said it's aser, and Rav Lezer said if the cover is strong enough, it's allowed. Says the Gemara for Rabbanan, why do they say it's not allowed? There's this strong cover. Explains the Gemara, 7 lines on the bottom, because it might come open, and you are not going to realize it, and it's going to cause damage. Ein Matzins is a good choice over Rabim. Ravami Avale Ziza. Ravami had a ledge that went over an alleyway. And there was also a person Havale Ziza that had a balcony. Also, like Rav Ami, came to Rav Ami to find out what the story is. Amar Lei says Rav Ami Zilkai. It's go cut down your ledge. Amar Lei. The guy says Rav Ami, but Marnami is Lei. But you as well have the same thing. So why do I have to break mine and not yours? Explains Rav Ami, Didi lemuvuah, nothing. Mine is going to an alleyway, and b'nei mevuah machlin gabai are meichel to me, and they allow me. They forgive me. They allow me to keep my ledge there. Whereas Didach, Ravami told this man, there's just a rabbi mapik, and man meichel gabach, Ram doesn't have an owner. Therefore, there's no one that can be meichel. There's no one that can allow you to do it, and that's what you have to remove your ledge. A similar story, 3 lines on the bottom, teaches the Gemara. Rav Yanai havale ilon nanoiter shazarabim. Rav Yanai had a tree that's leading into shazarabim. There was a person that had the same also been shazarabim. And the people of shazarabim came to that guy and said, "Your tree is in shazarabim. You got to remove it." So the guy comes. Also, Rav Yanai came to Rav Yanai. Amar Lei, Rav Yanai told the man, as we turn over to Samach Amid Veiz, go today and come back tomorrow, Balayla. At night, Shadr Kati Lahudi Day. That night, what did Rav Yanai do? He had someone go and cut down his own tree that was also bordering into Rosh Hashanah. Lamachar, the next day, the guy comes back. Amar Lei says, Rav Yanai, Zel Koitz, go cut down your tree. Amar Lei, the guy says, wait, Rav Yanai, Vamar Nami Isli, but you have the same thing. Amar Lei says, Rav Yanai, no, I don't. Zel Chazi, go look, he Koitz Didi, if mine is cut down, then Koitz Didach, cut down yours. Eloi Koitz Didi, if mine is not cut down, then Hina Chanami, Eloi Koitz, you don't have to cut yours down. Now, the obvious kasha is, what's going on over here? Rav Yanai only removes his tree when this guy's coming for a similar din Torah. So explains the Gemara 5 lines down, Meikar my suffer, Lipseif my suffer. What was going on with Rav Yanai? What did he originally think, and what did he subsequently think? So explains the Gemara, Originally, Rav Yanai thought that the people of Shazam were happy. A big tree, you get shade. Came in the Chazit Kamakvi, but then when he saw they were upset with this other guy, Shadr Katzye, therefore he cut down his own tree. Says the Gemara, why didn't Rav Yanai tell this person, Zol Kaitzidach? Father, Akatzidi. Why was he makmid to first cut down his own tree? Tell him, come back tomorrow. Why didn't Rav Yanai Paskin go cut down yours and I'll cut down mine? Says the Gemara, you know why? Misham de Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish taught the Amar is Kaishishu. V'Kaishu. Says the Basik, first clean yourself, and then clean others, which we learn, Kishait Atzmecha. Such an important rule. Whenever you want to help someone else, first help yourself. First do what's right on yourself, and then you could do for others. Continues the Gemara. The Mishnah said, if he wants, he could move his own house a little bit into his own property, and then he's allowed to have a ledge over there, as it won't be in Rishos Harabim. Asks the Gemara, Ibayilu, Kanas v'lo mahu. Let's say he moved his own house inward a little bit, but he did not end up making a ledge. He's let afterwards go and make a ledge. Do we say that if you move your house back and you don't build anything, that shows that you're giving over the area in front of your house to Rosh Hashanah, or not? Rav Yochanan Amar Kanas Maitzi. He's a leader allowed to build a ledge. He's like, no, Kanas ain't a Maitzi, it's too late. Amar le Rav Yaakov le Rav Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa Azrucha. Let me explain to you lehoitzi whether you're allowed to extend kliyam lo peligi demaitzi. That's not a question you're allowed to. Ki peligi, you know what the shaila is lahachzer ksalim lemekayman. If you moved your house and now you want to put a ledge over, as long as it's within your original property, that's fine. The question is, are you allowed to afterwards build your house back to where it was, back to the line of Rosh Hashanah? That What is the machlekes? The Rish Yochanan said yes, and Rish Lakish said no. Says the Gemara, we learned the opposite. Rav Yochanan meinay machzer, Rish Lakish amar machzer. Rav Yochanan meinay machzer. Why? Mishum Rav Yehuda, Dam Rav Yehuda. Mitzah matzar shechzigu by Rabim aser lekalkulay. Once the Rabbim take over an area, you're not allowed to subsequently ruin it. Rish Lakish amar machzer. Why? Hani milechad like a Ravcha. Hacha ika Ravcha. But over here, there's place, even if you go back, you're not removing Rosh Hashanah. This was an extra area that was added onto Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it says Rish Lakish, you're allowed to take it back afterwards. We continue 5 lines from the Y lines, quoting the Mishnah, look, Achatzer, Ubazizim Ketrois, Arei B'chazkas, if someone bought a Chatzer and has Gizim Ketrois, ledges and balconies, he's allowed to keep them. Amar Rav Huna. Says Rav Huna Nafla, if they fall down, if the house falls down, you're allowed to rebuild it with the extending ledge and balcony, etc. So Meisvei asked the Gemara, and Rav Huna in Mesaydin vein mechayrin. One's not a plaster wall with line, nor ornament vein mefaychin, nor paint bizman hazeh nowadays. Lokach chotzer misuyades mechuveres mefiches. But if you bought a courtyard that the houses were plastered with lime ornamented or painted, then Arezu b'chazkasa. But what happens, Nafla, if they fall? On the first Y line, so says the Gemara, how can we pass him by us? Yes, chayzer b'naisa. We see over there a very similar parallel, and the halach is einay chayzer b'nai. Says the Gemara, Surah shiny over there. It was a special Isser not to paint certain things. That's a different story than by us, in which was no Isser at all. Tanu Rabbanan, what is this Isser that we're discussing? Says the Raisa. Lo yasid as Adam as Beisa Besid. After the Chorban Bayis, one is not allowed to plaster the walls of his house with lime. Ve'mirav by Chaylai Tevin Mutter. But if the plaster is mixed with sand or straw, it's allowed. If you mix it with chol, then it's very strong and it's aser, but teven, it's mutter. And this has to do with the beauty that we're trying to negate post chorban. Tanu Rabbanan on the third white line. Bishniya, the second chorban. Rabu Prushin. There were many Prushin people that would remove themselves to be Yisrael Shalachol Basar. They didn't eat meat. Lo Lishas Yayim. Nitval Lahem the Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua engaged them in conversation. Amar them B'ni. And says Rabbi Yeshua, what's going on? Why are you not drinking meat? Why are you not drinking wine, eating meat? Amru Lai, they responded, Nechol Basar. How can we eat meat? Do you not remember the karbanos? V'achshav batal, which is no longer. Nishta yayin, we should drink wine. That we were able to pour on top of the mizbeach originally. V'achshav batal. Amar them responds to Yeshua, Imkein lechem lo noichal. Says Yeshua. So are you stopping at wine and meat? Says Yeshua, then you should not eat bread. Why? Shekvar batal menachos, which had bread in it. Efshar b'peiros. So they agreed and they said, okay, we're only going to have peiros. But says Yeshua, what do you mean peiros lo noichal? You shouldn't eat fruit. Shekvar batal bikurim. Efshar b'peiros achev said, okay, we'll have other fruits which weren't part of bikurim. Mayim lo nish, you should drink water. Shekvar batal nitzach mayim. So afterwards, shasku. The people were quiet and they realized that this is not the appropriate action. Even after the Chorban, life has to go on and not refrain from eating or drinking everything. So says Rabbi Yeshua, Balamaisa, you want more? And let me tell you what to do. Amar Lehen tells Rabbi Yeshua, smack in the middle of the wide lines. The first one in line is Amar Lehen, b'ni my children. Ba'uv Amar Lehen, come and I'll tell you, Shlolis Avel Kol Iker. To not mourn at all is not possible. Excuse me, Shikvar Nigzru Gzeira. Why? Because the Churban has already happened, and therefore we certainly have to mourn. But to do too much is also impossible. The Gzeira has to be something that Klal Yisrael can handle. Atem ne'arim, va'oisi atem kaivrim agai kulai. You're cursed with a curse, but you're not going to take the whole nation. Ella kach amr chachamim teaches Rabbi Yeshua. You know how you mourn the B'chorba and Tzaradim es Beisa B'sid. U'mishayer b'oi davar mu'at. A very famous line. That when you build a house, you should leave over a little bit. V'kama, and how much is that? I'm Rabbi Yosef. Amma al amma. And Amar Rav Chisda, where do you leave over this Amma by Amma? In a place that you recognize. As soon as you walk into your new house, what do you see? An area which is not built. Kineged HaPesach. Opposite the doorway. And of course, this is where the custom comes to leave over. It's not just a custom, it's halacha mefuresh. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that you're always supposed to leave over an area of an Amma by an Ava, approximately 1.5 feet, 18 to 20 inches by 18, 20 inches, unfinished. So in order to remember the Churban. And we continue. Another thing you should do, says Rav Yeshua, whenever you're preparing a meal, Mishayir Davar Muat, leave something out. Don't have everything. Mahi Amra Baba, Kisa Daharsina, a little bit of fish. You shouldn't have. Anyone learning Dirshu Mishnah Brura, we had at the beginning of Reish Ben Beis, the beginning of Kavod Shabbos, how Kisa Daharsina is very basic. Isa Isha Kol Shach Shita. A woman adorns herself. What should she not do? Amarav Bas Sida'a. She should, the hair on her temple or forehead, she should let her hair grow a little bit and not remove these hair. Other pshatim, certain way to comb the hair, etc. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini tidbak l'shoini l'chiki v'goymer. Says the pasuk, if I forget Yerushalayim, I forget my right hand. Mayal roish sibchaisi. What does that mean? 10 lines on the bottom. Amar Rav Yitzchak. Ze'ifer makla. This refers to the Eifer makla shabarosh chasanim that we know when one gets married, you put a little ashes. Another sign of the Churban. Amalei Rabba Abaye. Heicha manachla. Where do you put the ashes? B'makim tefillin. Why? Shenemar, as the pasuk says, l'sum. L'shom le'avei tzion l'slam pe'er tachas pe'er. And what happens if we live with the focus that we don't have Beis HaMikdash? What are we going to get? So you will rejoice and merit 3 buildings. Shenemar, Simcha is Yerushalayim v'Gomer. Tani learned in a brayz of Mishal ben Elisha. Beis HaMikdash dinu. The following was halacha. It would be proper. We shouldn't have any meat and wine. Let's see when the game when the terrible empire took over the Romans, the Concise, mitzvahs, they mitzvahs. Vein menachais, and they don't allow us. They don't allow us to go to Lishvua Ben, to circumcisions. V'amrila, and some say Liisha Ben, Pinya Ben's. Denu shenigzor latzmeinu shalisi isha. Really, we should not get married to L'hoyle Banim. V'nim suzar shel Avram Kala Me'ilav Ella. So rather, of course, that's not possible. Hanach lem the Yisrael Mutav sheishayin v'al yemezidin. There's nothing else we could do. We have to go on. We have to go weiter, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu will take care. Hajan aloch cheskas batim. Quite the journey. B'siyata d'shmaya. Again, whenever we finish, we remind ourselves of the need for a chazara, and hopefully we'll conclude with the words I call them Misabel al Yushalayim, learning the sugyas, being machazek and leaving over the Amma B'Amma, being machazek that after the Churban we don't need each and everything. We're letting not have anything. We're able to live without everything. Zeicha v'raya b'simchasa.